The house is quiet now. Not the kind of quiet that promises peace, but the hollow quiet of things left undone. I stand in the entryway of what was once my childhood home, keys still warm in my palm, and the silence feels like a living thing wrapped around my throat. Sunlight cuts through the dusty windows in sharp, golden lines. It illuminates the spaces where furniture once lived, ghost impressions in the hardwood, rectangles of unfaded paint on the walls where family photos used to hang. The air smells of old wood and something else I can't quite name. Memory, maybe. Or regret. I am 33 years old. I have built a life 200 miles from here, in a coastal town where no one knows my name or the stories that shaped me. I bind books for a living now, restoring things that were broken, making them whole again. There's something poetic in that, I suppose, though I've never been one for poetry. My fingers trail along the floral wallpaper as I walk down the hallway. The pattern is faded now, roses turned pale pink, their edges curling where the glue has given up after decades of holding on. I remember running my hands along this same wall as a child, counting the flowers when I couldn't sleep, when the sounds from downstairs were too loud or too quiet. The staircase creaks under my weight, the same third step from the bottom that always gave me away when I tried to sneak out. I pause there, my hand on the banister, and allow myself the faintest smile. Some things never change, even when everything else has been stripped away. In the living room, I kneel beside the spot where the old leather armchair used to sit. My father's chair, where he would read the newspaper every morning with his coffee, where he would fall asleep during Sunday football games. I press my fingertips to the floorboard I know is loose, the one Andre and I discovered when we were kids, the one we used to hide our treasures in. The board lifts easily. Inside, covered in dust and cobwebs, is a piece of paper I haven't seen in 15 years. My hands shake as I unfold it. A crayon drawing, 2 stick figures holding hands under a sun that takes up half the sky. The figures are labeled in a child's unsteady handwriting, Malcolm and Andre. In the corner, in faded purple crayon, the words M afore ever are scribbled like a promise. I stare at it for a long time, long enough for the sunlight to shift, for the shadows to creep across the empty room, long enough for the weight of everything that's happened since this drawing was made to settle in my chest like a stone. Andre was 7 when he drew this. I was 9. We were best friends then, the way only brothers can be when the world is still small enough to fit in your backyard. He followed me everywhere, copied everything I did, believed everything I told him. I was his hero, and he was mine. That was before I understood what it meant to be different, before I learned that some truths are too dangerous to speak aloud, before I discovered that the people who are supposed to love you unconditionally sometimes have conditions after all. Outside, I hear the sound of a car pulling up. The engine idles for a moment, then cuts off. A car door slams. Footsteps on the gravel driveway, tentative, uncertain. I don't move. I remain kneeling on the floor, the drawing still in my hands, my heart suddenly beating too fast. I know who it is. I've known this moment would come from the second I placed the winning bid on this house 3 weeks ago. I've been dreading it and anticipating it in equal measure. The footsteps stop at the front door. There's a pause, long enough that I wonder if they might just leave. Then, a soft knock. 3 short raps, the same pattern Andre used to knock on my bedroom door when we were kids. I fold the drawing carefully and slip it into my jacket pocket. Then I stand, brush the dust from my knees, and walk to the door. My hand hovers over the handle for a moment. Once I open this door, there will be no going back. The careful, quiet life I've built will be shattered, and I'll have to face the ghosts I've spent 15 years running from. But this house is mine now. I bought it with my own money, signed the papers with my own name. I am not the 18-year-old boy who was thrown out of here with nothing but a suitcase and a broken heart. I am not the scared kid who slept in his car for 3 weeks because he had nowhere else to go. I am Malcolm Reyes, and this is my house. Whatever happens next, I will face it on my own terms. I open the door. I close the door without opening it. The knocking comes again, more insistent this time, but I turn away and walk back into the house. I'm not ready. Not yet. Instead, I drive the 47 miles back to Annadale, where I've built a life so quiet it barely makes a sound. The coastal town sits nestled between rolling hills and the Pacific, perpetually wrapped in fog that rolls in like clockwork every evening. It's the kind of place where people come to disappear, and I've been disappearing here for 15 years. My bookshop sits on the corner of Main and Harbor, squeezed between a coffee roastery and a vintage clothing store. The sign above the door reads, "Bound, Restored," in faded gold letters. I painted it myself when I first opened, back when I still believed I might fail at this too. But the business has grown slowly, steadily, like everything else in my life here. The morning routine is sacred. Coffee at 7 from the place next door, where Maria knows my order before I walk through the door. Dark roast, no sugar, just a splash of cream. She's been making it the same way for 8 years, and I've never had the heart to tell her I've started preferring it black. I unlock the shop at 8 sharp. The scent hits me immediately, leather and ink and old paper, with just a hint of the glue I use to repair spines. It's become the smell of home, more familiar to me now than the floral wallpaper and creaking floors of my childhood. Ezra is waiting for me in the window display, a gray tabby who showed up 3 winters ago and decided to stay. He doesn't belong to me, exactly, but he doesn't belong to anyone else either. We have an understanding. I provide warmth and the occasional tin of tuna. He provides companionship without questions. The radio plays softly in the background. Jazz mostly, sometimes classical. Never talk radio, never news. I learned long ago that the world outside Annadale moves too fast and speaks too loudly for the kind of peace I've cultivated here. My apartment is upstairs, accessible through a door at the back of the shop. I could have rented somewhere else, somewhere with more space or better light, but I like the containment of living above my work. It feels safe, having everything I need within these walls. The apartment is spare by design. A bed, a small kitchen table, 2 chairs, though I rarely have company. A reading corner with a single lamp and a worn leather chair I rescued from an estate sale. There are no photographs on the walls, no mementos from before, nothing that might drag me backward into the person I used to be. But I'm not cold, only careful. I've learned to find warmth in small things, the weight of a book in my hands as I repair its binding, the satisfaction of matching thread to fabric, of making something broken whole again. The way regular customers smile when they see their rescued volumes returned to them, better than they were before. Mrs. Chen brings me her mother's recipe collection, pages yellowed and splitting at the seams. I spend 2 days carefully separating each page, cleaning the stains, reinforcing the binding with new thread. When I return it to her, she cries. She tells me it's like having her mother back. This is what I do. I fix things. I make them last. Young couples bring me their wedding albums, damaged by flood or fire or simply the passage of time. I restore them carefully, reverently, understanding that I'm not just repairing paper and glue, but preserving love itself. Sometimes I wonder what it would be like to have my own memories worth preserving, but the thought never lingers long. The work is meditative. Hours pass without notice as I lose myself in the careful manipulation of thread and needle, the precise application of glue, the delicate process of pressing pages back into place. My hands know this work better than they know anything else. They are steady here, sure of themselves in a way they've never been anywhere else. Evenings, I walk down to the harbor. The fog is usually rolling in by then, transforming the world into something soft and indistinct. I like the way it obscures the edges of things, makes the familiar mysterious. There's a bench at the end of the pier where I sometimes sit and watch the fishing boats return. Their lights cut through the gray like promises. I've been alone for so long that solitude feels like a choice rather than a circumstance. I tell myself I prefer it this way. No complications, no disappointments, no moments when someone might look at me and decide I'm not enough. But sometimes, in the quiet hours before dawn, I catch myself listening for sounds that aren't there. Footsteps on the stairs, a voice calling my name. The phantom presence of someone who might understand the weight of the silence I carry. The letter arrived last Tuesday. Plain white envelope, no return address, postmarked from my hometown. I almost threw it away without opening it. I'd trained myself not to expect anything from that place, not to hope for reconciliation or explanation. But something about the handwriting on the envelope made me pause. It was from the city. Official letterhead. Formal language. The Reyes property on Bellevue Avenue was in foreclosure. Available at public auction. Interested parties should contact the number listed below. I stared at that letter for 3 days. I carried it with me to work, left it on my kitchen table at night. I memorized every word, every comma, every official stamp. The house where I grew up, where I learned to love and fear in equal measure, was about to belong to someone else. The thought of strangers living in my childhood bedroom, of some other family making memories in the kitchen where my mother used to make pancakes on Sunday mornings, was unbearable. But the thought of going back, of facing the ghosts I'd spent 15 years avoiding, was worse. In the end, I called the number. I made arrangements to bid by phone. I told myself I was just curious, that I had no intention of actually buying the place. But when the bidding began, I found myself speaking numbers I couldn't afford, committing to a future I hadn't planned. I won. The house that had rejected me, that had spit me out like something toxic, was mine. For the first time in 15 years, I owned something that had owned me first. The drive back to sign the papers was the longest 47 miles of my life. The landscape changed as I moved inland. The fog giving way to harder light, the gentle hills replaced by the stark geometry of farmland. Everything looked smaller than I remembered, diminished by time and distance. But when I pulled into the driveway of 1247 Bellevue Avenue, my hands were shaking. The house looked exactly the same, and completely different. The paint was peeling, the garden overgrown, the porch sagging slightly on one side. It looked tired, abandoned, like something that had been waiting too long for someone to come home. I signed the papers in my car, unable to bring myself to go inside. The real estate agent seemed puzzled by my reluctance, but I didn't explain. How could I tell him that this house had been my first heartbreak, my first lesson in the conditional nature of love? Now, 3 weeks later, I'm finally ready to face what I've bought. The keys feel heavy in my pocket as I drive back toward Annadale. I've made arrangements to close the shop for a few days, told my regular customers I'm taking a brief vacation. I didn't mention where I was going or why. Tomorrow, I'll return to the house. I'll walk through the rooms where I learned to hide parts of myself, where I practiced being someone else, someone acceptable. I'll decide what to do with the shell of my childhood, whether to restore it or tear it down. But tonight, I'm still Malcolm Reyes, the bookbinder from Annadale. I'm still the man who fixed things, who made them last. I'm still safe in my carefully constructed solitude. Tonight, I can still pretend that some distances are too great to cross, that some doors, once closed, stay closed forever. But I know better. I've always known better. The past isn't a book I can rebind with stronger thread. It's a wound that never quite healed, and now I'm about to press my fingers directly into the scar. I return to the house 3 days later. This time, I don't hesitate at the door. I walk straight through, past the entryway where I stood frozen before, past the living room where I found the drawing that still sits in my jacket pocket. I have work to do here, decisions to make about what this place will become. The house feels different in the daylight, less haunted maybe, more like what it actually is, an old building that needs attention, walls that need paint, floors that need refinishing. I can approach it like I approach the damaged books in my shop, assess the problems, develop a plan, execute it step by step. I'm measuring the kitchen windows when I hear the car pull up again. The same hesitant engine, the same careful footsteps on gravel. This time, I don't run. I set down my tape measure and walk to the front door. Through the glass, I see him. Andre. My little brother. Though there's nothing little about him anymore. He's 28 now, broad-shouldered like our father, with the same dark hair and serious eyes. But where I remember sharpness, there's softness now. Laugh lines around his eyes, a gentleness in his posture that wasn't there when we were young. He's not alone. A small hand clutches his, attached to a boy who can't be more than 5. The child has Andre's dark hair but lighter eyes, and he's staring up at the house with the kind of wonder that only children possess. He points at something, the weather vane on the roof, maybe, or the way the afternoon light catches the windows. I open the door before they can knock. The silence that follows is dense, loaded with 15 years of absence. Andre stares at me like he's seeing a ghost. And maybe he is. I'm not the angry 18-year-old who left here with nothing but hurt and defiance. I'm not the boy who used to sneak cigarettes behind the garage or who once broke his wrist falling out of the oak tree in the backyard. I am a stranger wearing the face of someone he used to know. The child breaks the silence first. He tugs on Andre's hand and whispers something I can't quite catch. Andre nods and looks back at me, uncertainty written across his features. "Can we come in?" he asks. "Just for a minute." I step aside and gesture them through. The child immediately begins exploring, his footsteps echoing in the empty rooms. He runs to the windows, peeks around corners, marvels at the way his voice bounces off the walls. Andre follows him with his eyes, ready to intervene if needed. But the boy is careful, respectful in the way children are, when they sense they're somewhere important. We end up in the kitchen, the three of us standing awkwardly around the space where the dining table used to be. I offer them water, which they decline. Andre keeps looking around the room, taking in the changes and the things that remain the same. The boy Leo, Andre calls him, asks if this is where his daddy used to live. Andre nods. "A long time ago," he says, "with his brother." Leo looks at me with new interest. "You're Uncle Malcolm," he says. "It's not a question." "I am," I tell him, though I'm surprised he knows my name at all. We sit on the kitchen floor, the three of us in a triangle. It's the only way to be comfortable in a room without furniture. Leo produces a small toy car from his pocket and begins rolling it across the hardwood, making engine noises under his breath. Andre and I watch him, both of us probably grateful for the distraction. The conversation starts slowly. Andre tells me about his job. He's a teacher now, 5th grade, like he always said he wanted to be. He talks about his wife, Sarah, who's at home with their daughter. Leo is their oldest, and there's a baby girl named Emma who just turned 2. He shows me photos on his phone. Sarah has kind eyes and a warm smile. Emma has Andre's serious expression, but softer somehow, like she's always on the verge of laughing. They look happy, settled, like the kind of family I used to imagine having when I was young and still believed in happy endings. I tell him about my shop, about the bookbinding, about Annadale. I keep the details surface level, but he listens with genuine interest. He asks good questions, remembers things I mention. When I tell him about Mrs. Chen's recipe collection, he smiles and says he's glad I found something that makes me happy. The conversation could continue like this indefinitely, safe and polite and distant. But then Leo wanders off toward the living room, and Andre and I are alone for the first time in 15 years. The silence stretches between us, heavy with everything we haven't said. Finally, Andre breaks it. "I didn't know it was you who bought the house," he says. "I mean, I hoped maybe, but I didn't know for sure." I study his face, looking for signs of the boy I used to know. The one who followed me everywhere, who believed everything I told him, who cried when I left even though he never tried to stop them from throwing me out. "It was available," I say. "I had the money." He nods, but I can see he wants to say more. He fidgets with his wedding ring, looks out the window where Leo is now examining something in the overgrown garden. "There's something else," Andre says. "Something I need to tell you." I wait. I've learned patience in my 15 years away, learned to let silence do the work that words can't. "Mom's sick," he says finally. "Really sick. Cancer. The doctors say she has maybe 6 months, maybe less." The words hit me like a physical blow, but I don't let it show. I've had 15 years to prepare for this moment, to imagine what I would feel when I finally heard news of my family. But I'm not prepared for the way my chest tightens, for the sudden difficulty in breathing. "I'm sorry," I say, "and I mean it. Despite everything, I don't want her to suffer." Andre nods, but he's not finished. "We tried to find you," he says, "after the diagnosis. We hired someone, a private investigator, but it was like you disappeared completely." "I had," I tell him. "That was the point." He looks at me then, really looks, and I see something break in his expression. The guilt I've been carrying for 15 years is nothing compared to what I see in his eyes now. I should have done something, he says. When they threw you out, I should have said something, should have stood up for you. You were my brother, and I just let it happen. You were 13, I remind him. You were a kid. But I knew it was wrong, he says. Even then, I knew. And I've regretted it every day since. Leo appears in the doorway, holding a dandelion he's picked from the garden. He offers it to me with the solemnity of someone presenting a great treasure. I take it, thank him, and tuck it behind my ear. He giggles at this, and for a moment, the weight in the room lifts. Andre watches this exchange with something like wonder. You're good with him, he says. I like kids, I tell him. I just never had any of my own. There's a question in his eyes, but he doesn't ask it. Maybe he's learned some things about boundaries in the years since I left. Maybe he understands now that some stories aren't his to know. Instead, he asks if I'm planning to move back into the house. I don't know yet, I say. I'm still figuring out what I want to do with it. He nods, then hesitates. Would you maybe want to have dinner sometime? Sarah would love to meet you. And Emma, she should know her uncle. The invitation hangs in the air between us. It's a bridge, tentative and fragile, spanning 15 years of silence. I could cross it, or I could let it collapse under the weight of everything that's happened. I look at Leo, who's now making his toy car dance across the windowsill. He's humming to himself, completely absorbed in his play. He has no idea about the history in this room, the ghosts that still linger in the corners. To him, this is just a house, and I'm just his uncle, and the world is exactly as simple as it appears. Maybe, I say finally. Let me think about it. Andre smiles then, the first real smile I've seen from him today. It transforms his face, makes him look younger, more like the boy I remember. We walk them to the door. Leo waves goodbye from the car window as they drive away. I watch until they disappear around the corner, then close the door and lean against it. The house feels different now. Less empty, maybe. As if the conversation has filled it with something, not warmth, exactly, but possibility. The potential for warmth, which might be the same thing. I walk back to the living room, where the loose floorboard waits. I kneel down and lift it again. Look at the empty space where the drawing used to be. Then I reach into my jacket pocket and pull out the piece of paper Malcolm and Andre, stick figures holding hands under a crayon sun. I smooth out the creases, study the faded purple letters in the corner. M, a forever. A promise made by children who believed in forever, who couldn't imagine a world where brothers might become strangers. I fold the drawing carefully and place it back in its hiding place. Then I replace the floorboard and stand up, brushing the dust from my knees. Outside, the sun is setting, painting the empty rooms in shades of gold and amber. I have work to do here, decisions to make. But for the first time since I bought this house, I'm not afraid of what I might find in the shadows. I pull out my phone and scroll through my contacts until I find the number for the woman who sometimes helps me with large restoration projects. Mrs. Patterson, who has steady hands and infinite patience for delicate work. I'll need help, I realize. Not just with the house, but with everything that comes after. The conversations that need to happen, the bridges that need to be rebuilt, the careful work of learning to trust again. But I'm good at restoration. I've been doing it for 15 years. I know how to take something broken and make it whole again. How to preserve what's worth saving while letting go of what's beyond repair. I make the call. Mrs. Patterson answers on the second ring, and I tell her I have a project that's going to take some time. How much time? She asks. I look around the empty house, at the walls that need painting and the floors that need refinishing and the windows that need new glass. I think about Andre's invitation, about the possibility of dinner with his family, about the long road between where I am and where I might want to be. I'm not sure yet, I tell her, but I think it's going to be worth it. The work begins the next morning. Mrs. Patterson arrives at 7:30 with coffee and a toolbox that's seen more years than both of us combined. She's 64, silver-haired, with hands that know their way around broken things. She doesn't ask why I'm restoring a house 47 miles from where I live, doesn't comment on the fact that I've never mentioned having family before. She just surveys the rooms with a professional eye and tells me we'll start with the wallpaper. Peeling back the layers is like performing archaeology on my own childhood. Under the faded roses in the hallway, we find green stripes from the 80s. Under those, yellow flowers from the 70s. Under those, the original plaster, marked with pencil lines and dates. Here, by the kitchen doorway, someone tracked my height year by year. Malcolm, age 6, 7, 8, 9. The marks stop at 10, which was when I started slouching, trying to make myself smaller, less noticeable. There's another set of marks too, fainter but still visible. Andre, starting 3 years later, always trying to catch up. I run my fingers over these ghost measurements, and Mrs. Patterson pretends not to notice when I have to step outside for air. The handprints are harder to find, but impossible to miss once you know where to look. Small hands pressed into paint that was still wet, preserved now under decades of wallpaper and neglect. Mine and Andre's, side by side on the wall behind where the couch used to be. We must have been painting with our mother, helping her redecorate. I would have been 8, maybe 9. Andre would have been 5 or 6. I photograph everything. Each mark, each hidden layer, each small piece of evidence that children once lived here, once left their mark on these walls. I tell myself it's for documentation purposes, for the restoration. But really, I'm archiving a life that feels like it belonged to someone else. Mrs. Patterson works with quiet efficiency, scraping and sanding and preparing surfaces. She hums while she works, old songs I recognize but can't name. Sometimes she pauses to examine something she's uncovered: a nail hole, a water stain, a place where the plaster has cracked. She approaches each imperfection with the same care I use on damaged books, studying the problem before deciding how to fix it. We work in companionable silence mostly. She understands that this isn't just about making the house look better. It's about deciding which parts of the past are worth preserving and which parts need to be painted over. 3 days into the project, Andre comes back. Alone this time, carrying 2 cups of coffee and a bag of pastries from the bakery downtown. He finds us in the living room, where I'm carefully removing baseboards to check for water damage. "I brought breakfast," he says, like this is something we do regularly. We sit on the floor again, the 3 of us, and eat Danish pastries with our fingers. Mrs. Patterson asks Andre about his teaching, and he tells her about his students, about the kid who's been acting out because his parents are getting divorced, about the girl who writes poetry during math class. He's good with kids, I realize. Patient in a way I remember from when we were young, when he would spend hours trying to teach me to throw a curveball or helping me build elaborate Lego constructions. He has the same gentle persistence now, the same ability to see potential in things that seem broken. After Mrs. Patterson goes home, Andre and I keep working. He's handy in a way I'm not comfortable with: power tools and electrical work. He fixes the loose step on the stairs, the one that used to give me away when I tried to sneak out. He tests outlets, replaces a few that have stopped working. He moves through the house with familiarity, knowing which doors stick and which windows won't open. "You remember more than I thought you would," I tell him. "I used to come here sometimes," he says, "after Mom and Dad moved out, just to sit in the driveway, remembering." I don't ask what he was remembering. I'm not sure I want to know. But then he tells me anyway. "I used to pretend you were still here," he says, "that you were just upstairs in your room, reading or listening to music. I'd sit out there and imagine what I would say if you came outside, how I would apologize, how I would make things right." The words hang in the air between us. I focus on the section of wall I'm sanding, keeping my hands busy so I don't have to look at him. "What would you have said?" I ask finally. "That I was sorry, that I was scared, that I didn't know how to help you, but I should have tried anyway." I stop sanding. The honesty in his voice catches me off guard. I've spent 15 years imagining this conversation, preparing for it, but the reality is different than I expected. Less angry, more sad. "You were 13, I say again. "You were a kid." "But you were my brother," he says. "That should have mattered more than anything else." "It did matter," I tell him. "It's why I never called, never wrote. It would have been too hard to hear that you were okay without me." He looks at me then, really looks, and I see something shift in his expression. "We weren't okay," he says. "Nobody was okay after you left." The house felt wrong, like we were all just pretending to be a family. I want to ask him more about that, about what happened after I left, but I'm not ready yet. The wounds are still too fresh, even after all these years. Instead, I ask him about Sarah, about the kids. He shows me more photos, tells me stories that make me smile despite myself. Leo's obsession with dinosaurs, Emma's habit of hiding her vegetables under her napkin. The way Sarah sings while she cooks, how she always burns the first batch of pancakes, but the second batch is perfect. "It sounds like a good life," I tell him. "It is," he says, "but it's felt incomplete, like there was this space where you should have been." The admission costs him something, I can see that. He's not used to being this vulnerable, this direct about his feelings, but he's trying, and that means something. We work until dark, stripping wallpaper and scraping paint, talking in fragments about safe topics, work, weather, the logistics of renovation. But underneath the surface conversation, something else is happening. We're learning each other again, testing the boundaries of what we can say, what we can ask. When he leaves, he hugs me. Just briefly, awkwardly, like he's not sure if he's allowed. But he does it, and I let him. And for a moment, I remember what it felt like to have a brother. The next day, someone else shows up at the house. I'm on the front porch, scraping paint from the railings, when I hear a car pull up. But this isn't Andre's sedan. This is a pickup truck, rust-colored and familiar in a way that makes my stomach clench. The driver sits in the cab for a long moment before getting out. When he does, I almost don't recognize him. Victor Morales, the pastor's son. The boy who was my first kiss, my first love, my first heartbreak. But he's different now, softer somehow, less sharp around the edges. His hair is longer, streaked with early gray. He's wearing jeans and a flannel shirt instead of the pressed khakis and polo shirts I remember. He walks up the driveway slowly, like he's giving me time to run if I want to. When he reaches the porch, he stops at the bottom of the steps and looks up at me. "Hi, Malcolm," he says. His voice is deeper than I remember, rougher around the edges. "Victor," I say. I don't know what else to say. I set down my scraper and stand up, suddenly aware of how I must look paint-stained and dusty, older than the boy he once knew. "I heard you were back in town," he says. "I wanted to come see you, to talk if you're willing." I study his face, looking for signs of the boy who broke my heart when I was 17. The one who kissed me behind the church after youth group, who told me he loved me in whispered conversations under the bleachers. The one who pretended not to know me when his father found us together. "How did you find me?" I ask. "Small town," he says with a shrug. "Word gets around. Plus, Andre mentioned you were fixing up the house." "You talked to Andre?" "We ran into each other at the grocery store. He seemed happy, talking about you. Said you were a bookbinder now, that you have a shop on the coast." I nod, but I don't invite him up onto the porch. I'm not ready for that level of proximity, not yet. "I heard about your mother," he says. "I'm sorry." "Thank you," I say, though I'm not sure why he's apologizing. His family was never particularly kind to mine. But then he says something that surprises me. "My father died 2 years ago," he says. "Cancer. It was complicated." I remember his father, Pastor Morales, a hard man who preached about love on Sundays and judgment every other day of the week. The man who caught Victor and me together and made sure the whole town knew about it before the week was over. "I'm sorry," I say, and I mean it. Despite everything, I wouldn't wish that kind of loss on anyone. Victor nods, then looks up at the house. "It looks good," he says. "What you're doing here, it was always a beautiful house." We stand in silence for a moment, both of us looking up at the peeling paint and broken shutters. Both of us remembering, I think, what this place used to mean to us. "I'm not the same person I was then," Victor says finally. "I know that probably doesn't mean much to you, but I wanted you to know." "None of us are the same," I tell him. "That's what 15 years does." He nods, then reaches into his pocket and pulls out a business card. "I'm a counselor now," he says. I help people who are struggling with their identity, their families, their faith. People like we used to be. I take the card. Study it. Victor Morales, LMFT, Family and Individual Therapy. There's a rainbow flag in the corner, small but unmistakable. I'm not a pastor anymore, he says. Haven't been for years. Turns out I wasn't very good at preaching about a God who hates people like me. The admission hangs in the air between us. I think about the boy I used to know, the one who was so conflicted about what he felt, so terrified of disappointing his father. I think about the night he told me he loved me, and the morning after when he pretended it never happened. I should have protected you, he says. When my father found us, I should have stood up for you, for us. Instead, I let him destroy everything. You were 17, I say. You were scared. So were you, he says. But you were braver than I was. You told the truth even when it cost you everything. I don't feel brave, I tell him. I feel like I ran away. Maybe running away was the bravest thing you could do, he says. Maybe it was the only way to survive. I look at him then, really look, and I see something in his eyes that I recognize. The same careful guardedness I see in my own mirror every morning. The same hard-won peace that comes from learning to live with your choices. Would you maybe want to have coffee sometime, he asks. Just to talk. I know I don't deserve it, but I'd like to try to explain what happened back then, to apologize properly. I think about this, about the 17-year-old boy who broke my heart and the 34-year-old man who's asking for forgiveness. About the space between who we were and who we've become. Maybe, I say finally, let me think about it. He smiles then, and for a moment I catch a glimpse of the boy I used to love. Okay, he says, I'll wait. He turns to go, then pauses. Malcolm, he says, I'm glad you came back. I'm glad you're okay. I watch him drive away, the business card still in my hand. When his truck disappears around the corner, I sit down on the porch steps and stare at the rainbow flag in the corner of the card. 15 years ago, that symbol would have been impossible to imagine in this town. 15 years ago, Victor Morales was the pastor's son who couldn't admit to loving boys, and I was the broken kid who got thrown out for being honest about who I was. But here we are, both of us different than we were, both of us carrying scars that have shaped us into something new, both of us, maybe, ready to find out what forgiveness might look like. I slip the card into my pocket and pick up my scraper. There's still work to do here, still layers to peel back and surfaces to restore. But for the first time since I bought this house, I'm not doing it alone. The past is starting to feel less like a weight and more like a foundation, something to build on rather than something to run from. I go back to scraping paint, but I find myself humming while I work. An old song, one I remember from before, one that sounds like hope. I call Victor 3 days later. The business card has been sitting on my kitchen counter in Annadale, propped against the salt shaker, impossible to ignore. Every morning I see it while I drink my coffee, and every morning I think about what it might mean to forgive someone who broke your heart when you were 17. We meet at a coffee shop in town, neutral territory. He's already there when I arrive, sitting in a corner booth with 2 cups steaming on the table. He looks up when I walk in, and I see the same nervous energy I remember from when we were teenagers, when every conversation felt like it might be our last. I sit across from him, and for a moment, we just look at each other. 34 and 35 now. But in this light, in this moment, we could be 17 again. Except we're not. We're men who've lived 15 years of separate lives, who've learned things about love and loss and the weight of secrets. Thank you for coming, he says. I wasn't sure you would. I almost didn't, I tell him, but I'm curious, I guess, about who you are now. He smiles at that, a sad smile that doesn't quite reach his eyes. I'm still figuring that out myself, he says. But I'm different than I was. I hope I'm better. We talk carefully at first, the way you do when you're walking on ice that might not hold. He tells me about his work, about the clients he sees who are struggling with the same things we struggled with. Kids who've been rejected by their families, adults who've spent decades hiding who they are. He tells me about the support groups he runs, the workshops he leads on coming out later in life. It's not exactly what I plan to do with my life, he says, but it feels right. like maybe all the pain I went through means something now. I tell him about my shop, about the books I restore, about the quiet life I've built in Annadale. I don't mention the loneliness, the careful distance I've maintained from anything that might hurt me. But I think he hears it anyway, in the spaces between my words. "Do you ever think about that night?" he asks eventually. "The night my father found us." I think about it every day, I want to say. Instead, I nod. "I've replayed it 1,000 times, he says. Thought about what I could have done differently, what I should have done differently. We were kids, I tell him. We were scared kids who didn't know how to be brave. But you were brave, he says. Even when it cost you everything. Even when your parents threw you out, you didn't deny who you were. You didn't pretend it didn't happen." I look out the window, watching people walk past on the sidewalk. Normal people living normal lives, not carrying the weight of old secrets and broken hearts. I was 18, I say. I didn't have a choice anymore. The truth was already out there. "You could have lied," he says. "You could have said it was just a phase, that you were confused. My father would have believed that. Your parents might have too." "But it wasn't a lie," I tell him. "What I felt for you, that was real. Maybe the realest thing I'd ever felt." He reaches across the table then, his fingers brushing mine. It's the first time we've touched in 15 years, and the contact sends a shock through me that I wasn't prepared for. "It was real for me too," he says. "That's what made it so terrifying." We sit in silence for a while, our hands almost touching on the table. I can feel the warmth of his skin, the slight tremor in his fingers. He's nervous, I realize. As nervous as I am. "What happened after I left?" I ask eventually. He pulls his hand back, wraps it around his coffee cup. "My father made me go to conversion therapy," he says. 3 times a week for 2 years. I prayed every night for God to make me normal. I dated girls, tried to convince myself I could be what everyone wanted me to be. Did it work? I ask, though I already know the answer. For a while, I thought it did. I got married when I was 25. Lisa, a girl from church. Sweet, kind, everything a pastor's wife should be. We lasted 3 years. "I'm sorry," I say, and I mean it. "I'm sorry you had to go through that." "She deserved better," he says. "She deserved someone who could love her the way she needed to be loved." I tried, but I couldn't change who I was, no matter how hard I prayed. "What happened to your father?" I ask. He looks surprised that I care, but he answers. "He got sick about 5 years ago. Lung cancer. He spent his last months in my house, and I took care of him. Fed him, bathed him, sat with him when he couldn't sleep." "That must have been hard," I say. It was. But it was also healing, maybe. He couldn't preach anymore, couldn't judge anymore. He was just a sick old man who needed help. And I was just his son, trying to do the right thing. "Did he ever apologize?" I ask. "For what he did to you? To us?" "Not in words," Victor says. "But near the end, when he was really sick, he asked me if I was happy. I told him I was trying to be. He said that was all he'd ever wanted for me, and I think he meant it." I think about Pastor Morales, the man who destroyed my life when I was 17. I tried to imagine him weak and vulnerable, dependent on the son he'd tried so hard to change. There's something both tragic and beautiful in that image. "I'm working on the house," I tell him, "restoring it." "I heard. Andre mentioned it. How's it going?" "Hard," I say. "There's a lot of damage, a lot of layers to peel back." He nods, understanding the metaphor. "Sometimes you have to tear things down before you can build them back up," he says. We finish our coffee and walk outside together. The sun is setting, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. We stand on the sidewalk, not quite ready to say goodbye. "Would you maybe want to see it?" I ask. "The house. What I'm doing with it." He looks surprised, then pleased. "I'd like that," he says. We drive separately to Bellevue Avenue. I unlock the front door and lead him through the rooms, showing him the progress I've made. The walls I've stripped, the floors I've sanded, the windows I've replaced. He examines everything with the same careful attention he used to pay to my face when we were young. In the living room, I show him the loose floorboard, the hiding place where I found the drawing. I don't tell him about the drawing itself, but I explain what it means to find these remnants of my childhood. "It's beautiful," he says. "What you're doing here. It's like you're giving yourself back the home you lost." "I'm trying to," I tell him. "I'm not sure if it's working yet." He walks to the window, looks out at the street where we used to ride our bikes, where we used to meet after school to walk to the park. "This is where you kissed me for the first time," he says. "Right here, by this window." I remember. It was raining, and we were waiting for the storm to pass. You were scared someone would see us. "I was always scared," he says. "That was the problem." We're quiet for a while, both of us lost in memories. Then he turns to me, and I see something in his eyes that I recognize. The same longing I used to see when we were 17, when we would steal moments together and pretend we could make them last forever. "Malcolm," he says, "I know I don't have the right to ask this, but do you think we could try again? Not pick up where we left off, but start over. See who we are now, see what we might be together." The question hangs in the air between us. I think about the boy who broke my heart and the man who's asking for a second chance. I think about the 15 years we've both spent becoming different people, learning different lessons about love and courage and the price of honesty. "I don't know," I tell him. "I'm not sure I know how to trust you again." He nods, like he expected this answer. "I understand," he says. "I hurt you badly. I was a coward when you needed me to be brave." "You were 17, I say. We both were. But I'm not 17 anymore," he says. "I'm not my father's son anymore. I'm just me, and I'm asking you to give me a chance to prove that I've changed." I walk to the window where he kissed me 20 years ago, press my palm against the glass. Outside, the street is empty, quiet except for the sound of wind in the trees. This is where it all began, and maybe this is where it can begin again. "I can't promise anything," I tell him. "I can't promise that I'll be able to forgive you completely, or that I'll be able to love you the way I used to. I'm not asking for promises," he says. "I'm just asking for a chance." I turn to face him, and I see the man he's become. Not the scared boy who denied our love, but someone who's learned to be honest about who he is. Someone who spent years helping other people find the courage he couldn't find when he was young. "Okay," I say. "We can try." He smiles then, and this time it reaches his eyes. "Thank you," he says. "I won't let you down again." "I hope not," I tell him, "because I don't think I could survive it a second time." We stand there in the empty living room, two men who used to be boys, who used to be in love, who might be learning to love again. The house feels different around us, less haunted, more hopeful, like it's ready to hold new memories alongside the old ones. Later, after he's gone, I'm working on the staircase when I notice something I missed before. The newel post at the bottom of the stairs is loose, wobbly when I put my weight on it. I try to tighten it, but it won't hold. I'll have to remove it completely, check the foundation, maybe replace the whole thing. As I work it free, I hear something rattle inside. I tip the post on its side, and a piece of paper slides out. Yellowed and brittle, folded small enough to fit through the narrow opening. My hands shake as I unfold it. It's a letter, written in my mother's handwriting. The ink is faded, but I can still make out the words. It's addressed to me, dated 3 months after I left. "My dearest Malcolm," it begins. "I don't know if you'll ever read this, but I had to write it. I had to try to explain." I sink down onto the stairs, the letter trembling in my hands. The words blur as I read them, but I force myself to focus, to take in every sentence. She writes about the night they threw me out, about the things that were said, the anger and fear that drove their decision. She writes about the silence that followed, the way my absence echoed through every room of the house. She writes about regret, about the weight of what they'd done, about the way she lay awake at night wondering if I was safe, if I was warm, if I was alive. She writes about the porch light, how she started leaving it on every night just in case I decided to come home. "I don't know if what we did was right," she writes. "I thought we were protecting you, protecting our family. But all we did was break everything that mattered. All we did was lose the most important thing in the world." The letter goes on for 3 pages. She writes about missing my voice, my laugh, the way I used to hum while I did the dishes. She writes about Andre, how he kept asking when I was coming home, how he cried himself to sleep for weeks after I left. She writes about love, about how it took her months to understand that throwing me out wasn't protecting me from anything. It was just punishing me for being honest, for being brave enough to tell the truth about who I was. I hope you've found peace, she writes at the end. I hope you've found love, the kind of love that accepts you completely. I hope you've found the family you deserve, since we failed to be the family you needed. Every night I leave the porch light on. Every night I hope you might come home. Not to the people who hurt you, but to the love that was always there, even when we were too scared to show it. I love you, Malcolm. I have always loved you. I will always love you. Your mother. I read the letter 3 times, then fold it carefully and hold it against my chest. The words feel like absolution, like the forgiveness I didn't know I needed. But they also feel like grief, like mourning for all the years we lost, all the conversations we never had. I walk outside, the letter still in my hand. Across the street, the house where my parents moved after selling this one sits dark and quiet. But on the porch, just as my mother promised, a light burns bright against the darkness. She's been leaving it on for 15 years, waiting for me to come home. I stand in the street for a long time, looking at that light. Tomorrow, I'll go to the hospital. Tomorrow, I'll sit beside her bed and tell her that I got her letter, that I understand now what she was trying to say. But tonight, I just stand here and let myself feel the weight of being found, the weight of being loved, even when love looked like loss. The weight of coming home, not to the place I left, but to the understanding that I was never really gone. The porch light burns steady and sure, a beacon in the darkness, a promise kept, a love that endured even when everything else fell apart. I walk back to the house, my house, and close the door behind me. Inside, the empty rooms feel full of possibility. Full of the conversations I'm finally ready to have, the bridges I'm finally ready to build. The transformation isn't just about the house anymore. It's about everything. It's about becoming the person I was always meant to be, the person who can love and be loved without fear. It's about coming home. I don't sleep that night. I lie in my bed in Annadale, staring at the ceiling, the letter folded on my nightstand like a prayer I'm not sure I know how to answer. Every time I close my eyes, I see that porch light burning across the street, steady and patient, waiting for a son who's been too afraid to come home. At 5 in the morning, I give up on sleep. I make coffee, sit at my kitchen table, and call Andre. He answers on the second ring, his voice thick with sleep. I found something, I tell him. At the house. A letter from Mom. There's a long pause. Then, what kind of letter? The kind that changes everything, I say. We meet at the hospital an hour later. Andre looks tired, like he's been carrying this weight for too long. He's been here every day, he tells me as we walk through the parking lot. Sometimes twice a day. Sarah brings the kids on weekends. The hospice wing is quiet, painted in soft colors that are supposed to be soothing. It smells like disinfectant and something else, the particular sadness that settles in places where people come to say goodbye. Andre leads me down a hallway lined with doors, each one hiding its own private grief. We stop outside room 314. Andre looks at me, his hand on the door handle. She's weak, he says. She doesn't talk much anymore, but she's aware. She knows what's happening. I nod, though I'm not sure I'm ready for this. I'm not sure anyone is ever ready to face their dying mother after 15 years of silence. I'll wait out here, Andre says. This should be between you and her. I want to ask him to come with me, to be the bridge between who I was and who I've become. But this is something I have to do alone. I've been running from this moment for 15 years, and now it's time to stop running. I push open the door. The room is small, filled with the mechanical sounds of machines that measure heartbeats and breathing. There's a window that looks out onto a garden, sunlight streaming through the blinds in gentle lines. And in the bed, smaller than I remember, is my mother. She's awake, staring at the ceiling. Her hair is silver now, thin from the chemotherapy. Her hands rest on top of the blanket, the same hands that used to braid my hair when I was sick, that used to pack my lunch with little notes tucked inside. She turns her head when she hears me enter, and our eyes meet for the first time in 15 years. She doesn't speak at first, just stares at me like she's trying to make sure I'm real. Then her eyes fill with tears, and she whispers my name. Malcolm. The word breaks something open inside me. I walk to the chair beside her bed and sit down, my legs suddenly unsteady. Up close, I can see how much the illness has taken from her, how fragile she's become. But her eyes are the same, still the warm brown I remember from childhood. I got your letter, I tell her, the one you hid in the house. She closes her eyes, and for a moment I think she might have fallen asleep. But then she opens them again, and I see something like relief in her expression. I wasn't sure you'd ever find it, she says. Her voice is barely a whisper, but I hear every word. I almost didn't, I say. It was hidden in the newel post. I only found it because I was fixing the staircase. She smiles at that, the faintest curve of her lips. Always fixing things, she says. Even as a little boy, you were always trying to make things better. I reach out and take her hand. It's cold, lighter than I expected, but she squeezes my fingers with surprising strength. I'm sorry, she says, for everything, for not understanding, for being afraid, for choosing fear over love. I know, I tell her. I read your letter. I understand now. She shakes her head slightly. You shouldn't have to understand, she says. You should have been able to just be loved, just as you were. The words I've been carrying for 15 years start to spill out then. I tell her about the years after I left, about sleeping in my car, about the jobs I worked to pay for community college. I tell her about moving to Annadale, about learning to bind books, about building a life that felt safe even if it was lonely. She listens without interrupting, her eyes never leaving my face. When I finish, she's quiet for a long time. I'm proud of you, she says finally, for surviving, for building something beautiful out of all that pain. I wasn't sure I had, I tell her, until I came back to the house, until I started fixing it. I think maybe I was fixing myself too. She nods, understanding. The house was always yours, she says. Even when we took it away from you, it was always waiting for you to come home. We sit in silence for a while, her hand in mine. Through the window, I can see people walking in the garden, visitors coming and going, life continuing its ordinary rhythm. But in this room, time feels suspended, like we're existing in a pocket of grace where all the lost years can be forgiven. Andre told me you met someone, she says eventually. Someone from before. Victor, I say. Yes. She smiles again, and this time it reaches her eyes. I remember him, she says. The pastor's son. He was always watching you, even when he thought no one noticed. I'm not sure it's going to work, I tell her. There's too much history, too much hurt. Love isn't about certainty, she says. It's about being brave enough to try again, even when you're scared. I think about Victor, about the conversation we had in the coffee shop, about the way he looked at me in the empty house, about the man he's become, the work he does, helping people like us find their way home to themselves. He's different now, I say. We both are. That's what growing up means, she says. Learning to be better than you were. A nurse comes in to check on her, adjusting machines and making notes on a chart. She's kind, gentle with my mother, treating her with the dignity that comes from understanding that every person in this place is someone's whole world. After the nurse leaves, my mother turns back to me. There's something else, she says, something I need to tell you. I wait, holding her hand a little tighter. Your father, she says. He wanted to call you after we heard you were back. He wanted to apologize, to try to make things right. Wanted to, I repeat. Past tense. He's scared, she says. Ashamed. He doesn't know how to face what we did to you. I think about my father, the man who drove me to the bus station 15 years ago and told me not to come back. The man who couldn't look at me when he said it, who gripped the steering wheel so tightly his knuckles went white. Maybe he doesn't have to face it, I say. Maybe it's enough that he wants to. She studies my face, searching for something. You've forgiven us, she says. Haven't you? I'm trying to, I tell her. I think forgiveness is something you have to choose over and over again. Not just once. She nods, closing her eyes. When she opens them again, there's peace there that wasn't there before. I love you, Malcolm, she says. I have always loved you, even when I didn't know how to show it. I love you too, Mom, I say. The words feel strange in my mouth after so many years, but they also feel right, like coming home to a language I'd forgotten I knew. She falls asleep then, her breathing slow and steady. I sit with her for another hour, watching her face in the afternoon light, memorizing the lines and shadows that time has drawn there. When I finally leave, I kiss her forehead, and she stirs just enough to smile. Andre is waiting in the hallway, slumped in a plastic chair that looks like it's seen too many vigils. He stands when he sees me, searching my face for clues about what happened inside. How was it? He asks. Hard, I say. Good. Necessary. We walk to the elevator together, neither of us speaking. In the lobby, Andre stops and turns to me. She's been waiting for this, he says. For you to come back. I think she's been holding on just for this. I know, I tell him. I can see it in her eyes. He nods, then hesitates. There's something else, he says. Dad wants to see you too. He's been asking about you since he heard you were back. I think about this, about the man who was once my father and might still be, in some complicated way. About the courage it takes to face the people you've hurt, to ask for forgiveness when you're not sure you deserve it. Not today, I say. But maybe. Soon. Andre smiles, and I see relief in his expression. That's enough, he says. That's more than enough. I drive back to Annadale as the sun sets, the letters still in my pocket, my mother's words still echoing in my head. Love isn't about certainty. It's about being brave enough to try again, even when you're scared. My phone buzzes as I pull into my driveway. A text from Victor. How are you? Thinking of you. I stare at the message for a long time, then type back. I saw my mother today. Can you come over? I think we need to talk. He responds immediately. On my way. I sit in my car for a few minutes, gathering myself. Then I go inside and wait for him to arrive. When he knocks, I open the door without hesitation. He's holding a bottle of wine and wearing the same nervous expression he had in the coffee shop. But there's something different too, something more settled, like he's made a decision about something. How did it go? He asks. I tell him everything. About the letter, about the conversation with my mother, about the forgiveness that feels fragile and new, but also surprisingly strong. He listens without interrupting, his eyes never leaving my face. When I finish, he's quiet for a long time. I'm proud of you, he says finally, for going, for facing it, for choosing love over fear. I'm still scared, I tell him, about all of it, about her dying, about my father, about us. He reaches across the space between us and takes my hand. That's okay, he says. We can be scared together. We sit on my couch, wine forgotten, hands linked in the space between us. Outside, the fog is rolling in from the ocean, wrapping the town in its familiar embrace. But inside, something has shifted. The careful distance I've maintained for 15 years is dissolving, replaced by something that feels like hope. I want to try, I tell him, with us. But I need you to know that I'm not the same person I was when we were 17. Neither am I, he says. Maybe that's the point. We talk until late into the night, about the people we've become, about the scars we carry, about the possibility of building something new on the foundation of what we once were. When he finally gets up to leave, I walk him to the door. He pauses on the threshold, looks back at me. Malcolm, he says, I know I hurt you before. I know I have to earn your trust again. But I want you to know that I'm not going anywhere this time. Whatever happens, I'm not going anywhere. I believe him, not because I'm certain he won't hurt me again, but because I'm finally ready to be brave enough to find out. After he leaves, I sit in my living room and think about the choice I've made. To forgive, to try again, to open my heart to the possibility of love even when there are no guarantees. It's terrifying and exhilarating and absolutely necessary. Tomorrow, I'll go back to the hospital. I'll sit with my mother and tell her about my conversation with Victor. I'll hold her hand and let her know that I'm choosing love over fear, just like she asked me to. And maybe, when I'm ready, I'll call my father. Not because I have to, but because forgiveness isn't just about the people who hurt us. It's about freeing ourselves from the weight of carrying that hurt alone. The house on Bellevue Avenue is waiting for me too, half restored and full of possibility. Like everything else in my life right now, it's a work in progress. But I'm learning that broken things can be made whole again, if you're patient enough to do the work. I'm learning that coming home isn't about returning to who you were. It's about becoming who you're meant to be. 3 months later, the house is finished. Not perfect, but complete. The walls are painted in soft colors that let light move through the rooms like water. The floors gleam with new finish. Though I kept the original boards with their small imperfections, they're evidence of lives lived within these walls. The kitchen has modern appliances but vintage fixtures, a blend of old and new that feels right for a house that's learning to hold both past and future. My mother died 6 weeks ago. Quietly, in her sleep, with Andre and me on either side of her bed. She squeezed my hand one last time before she let go, and I think she was smiling. The funeral was small, respectful, attended by people who remembered her as she was before fear made her choices for her. My father spoke to me afterward, outside the cemetery. Not an apology exactly, but an acknowledgement. He told me he was glad I came back, that she died peaceful knowing I was home. He shook my hand, and his grip was firm but trembling, the handshake of a man who knows he's out of time to fix old mistakes. I moved my shop to the house 2 weeks later. The front rooms make perfect workspace, with big windows that let in the morning light. I kept the apartment in Annadale as a retreat. But this is home now. This is where I belong. Victor helped me move. He's been spending most nights here, though we're still careful with words like relationship or future. We're learning each other again, slowly. Like you would learn a new language. Some days are easier than others. Some days we catch ourselves falling back into old patterns, old fears. But we're trying. And that seems to be enough for now. The bookshop is thriving. Word spread about my return, about the restoration, and people drive from 3 towns over to bring me their damaged books. Mrs. Chen still comes by with her family recipes, now bound in leather covers that will last another generation. Young couples bring their wedding albums, their love letters, their precious things that need preserving. I've started taking on apprentices too. Kids from the community college who want to learn a trade that's almost extinct. I teach them about thread and glue and the patience required to fix things properly. I teach them that some damage can't be undone, but it can be made beautiful in new ways. Andre visits every weekend with his family. Sarah is warm and genuine, the kind of person who makes you feel like you've known her forever. She brings casseroles and homemade bread, treats the house like it's always been part of their family routine. The kids have claimed the backyard as their domain, and Leo has appointed himself my official assistant, though mostly he just asks endless questions about why books fall apart and how glue works. Emma is walking now, toddling around the house with the fearless confidence of someone who's never been told she doesn't belong anywhere. She calls me Unkamal and climbs into my lap when I'm working, her small hands exploring the texture of leather and paper. Sometimes I catch Andre watching these interactions with something like wonder, like he's seeing a version of me he never knew existed. We've started having dinner together most Sundays, the 4 of us, sometimes 5 when Victor joins us. We cook together in the kitchen that once felt too full of ghosts to enter, and now it's full of different sounds: laughter, the clatter of dishes, Leo's detailed explanations of whatever dinosaur he's obsessed with that week. The conversations are easier now. Andre and I talk about our mother, about the things we miss, and the things we're grateful for. We talk about our father too, who visits occasionally, still awkward but trying. He brought Leo a baseball glove last week, the same brand he used to buy for Andre and me when we were kids. Leo was delighted, though he's much more interested in books than sports. Victor fits into these family dinners like he always belonged there. He's good with the kids, patient with their questions about why some people have two daddies, or why Uncle Malcolm lives in the house where their daddy grew up. He answers with the same gentle honesty he uses in his practice, never making anything seem shameful or strange. Some evenings, after Andre and his family have gone home, Victor and I sit on the front porch and watch the sun set over the neighborhood. The porch light across the street still burns every night, but it feels different now. Not like a vigil anymore, but like a celebration. A reminder that love persists, even when it has to wait. We talk about the future sometimes, Victor and I, about the possibility of making this official, of building something permanent together. We talk about traveling, about the places we want to see together that we were too scared to imagine when we were young. We talk about growing old in this house, about the stories we'll tell about the long way we took to find each other again. But mostly we don't talk about the future. We focus on the present, on the small daily miracles of being able to reach for each other without fear, of being able to say "I love you" without looking over our shoulders. This morning, I'm sitting on the porch with my coffee, watching Leo ride his bike up and down the sidewalk. He's gotten braver since the first time I saw him here, more confident in his loops and turns. Andre jogs behind him, no longer worried that he'll fall. Inside the house, Victor is making pancakes. I can hear him humming through the open windows, the same song I've been humming while I work. Emma is probably sitting in her high chair, making a mess of whatever breakfast she's supposed to be eating. Sarah is likely reading the paper, occasionally commenting on some local news that Victor responds to with gentle humor. It's an ordinary Sunday morning, the kind I never imagined I'd have when I was 18, and angry and convinced that love was something that happened to other people. But here I am, 34 years old, surrounded by the family I was born into and the family I chose, living in the house that broke my heart and taught me how to heal it. The mantel in the living room holds two pictures now. The old drawing I found in the floorboard, M. A forever, in faded purple crayon, sits in a simple frame. Next to it, a photograph Victor took last month. Him and me sitting on this same porch, his arm around my shoulders, both of us smiling like we've remembered something we thought we'd lost forever. Leo crashes his bike gently into the porch steps and looks up at me. "Uncle Mal," he says, "are you happy?" It's the kind of question only a child would ask, direct and uncomplicated. I look at him, this small person who's never known a world where I wasn't part of his family, and I realize I have an answer. "Yes," I tell him, "I'm happy." He nods, satisfied, and pedals away to crash into something else. Andre laughs and follows him, and I sit back in my chair, feeling the weight of contentment settle around me like a blanket. The house is quiet now, but it's a different kind of quiet than when I first walked through these rooms. It's the quiet of peace, of things settled in their proper places. It's the quiet of a life that's been broken and mended and broken again, but has learned to hold more love than it ever thought possible. I close my eyes and listen to the sounds of home. Victor's voice drifting through the windows, Leo's laughter echoing down the street, the gentle creak of the porch swing that Andre fixed last weekend. These are the sounds I want to remember, the soundtrack to the life I never knew I was allowed to have. The morning sun warms my face, and I let myself rest in this moment, in this place, in this quiet resolution of a story that took 34 years to tell. I'm home now, finally and completely home, and I'm never leaving again. The house holds us all, the living and the dead, the past and the present, the love that was lost and the love that was found. It holds us gently, like the skilled hands of someone who knows how to mend broken things, how to make them stronger in the places where they were once torn apart. I open my eyes and look out at the street where I learned to ride a bike, where I had my first kiss, where I said goodbye to everything I thought I knew about love and belonging. It's the same street, but I'm different now. We're all different now. And that's exactly as it should be.